My name's Alisa. I am a consultant with LSAT Unplugged. I am also a TA with LSAT Unplugged. I have been a TA for probably about 8 months now, seven to 8 months now with Ayaka. A little bit about myself. I started applying for law school a year ago. I realized that it was going to take a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. I joined the LSAT Unplugged course under scholarship. I do have a fee waiver. I'm a low income, queer, Hispanic woman who's first generation applying to law school. So I joined LSAT Unplugged's course to learn more about what the heck is going on. And after being in the course for a few months, I started to become so obsessed really with the application process that Steve made me a TA. And I did not do that alone. That obsession did not develop alone. That obsession developed with this woman over here, Ayaka, and I'll let her say hi.
Yeah, hi. I started with LSAT Unplugged probably a little bit over a year ago. And with Alisa, I'm a consultant and TA with LSAT Unplugged. Started, around the same time as Alisa, and I, did the studying for the LSAT heads down. But then as I came out of studying for the LSAT, got really into the application process, what we need to do to, research schools, what are the best ways to appeal to schools, and all of that outside of test scores and GPA. So that's really where my passion lies, and I really love the essay writing process. So that's kind of where Alisa and I have connected, and it was like an ET moment with the fingers. So that's where we connected. And I'm a non-traditional student. I graduated college in 2015 and I worked abroad for 5 years. So I came back to the US right before the pandemic hit. So it was an interesting transition back, and it was an interesting time to be studying for the LSAT and then also applying to school. And so I'll be applying this fall, but just this process has taught me so much, and we're excited to share all of this with you. Alisa and I have been looking at essays for a very long time, and we've seen over 100, I think we've seen a couple hundred at this point, of essays, and we want to share what we've learned and what we've seen over this crazy year that we've had, and what are the trends in that year. So we want to make sure that you have all the tools to write the best essay you can, to put out the best application you can for law school, because it's an expensive endeavor and you want to get all the scholarship money that you can and get into the best school that you can. So we're all here for you.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Like Ayaka mentioned, we've seen over hundreds of essays now, and we're starting to see patterns. And with these patterns, we are witnessing that a lot of people are saying to us, maybe like people in the LSAT Unplugged course and other people that email us. I dropped our email in the chat. That goes directly to Ayaka and I. If you have any questions about today, or if you ever want to reach out in the future, we've seen so many essays now that people will say to us, like, I'm trying to stand out. I want myself to, I'm trying to sell myself. I'm trying to put myself in the best light. And we realize that everybody's doing the same thing in effort to try to stand out. And we want to share it with you. We've been impacted so much by Steve's course. We work with Steve directly. Ayaka and I just got off of a personal call with Steve like an hour ago, and we're directly connected to him, and he's been widely successful as well. So enough about us. I'm going to go ahead and just let everyone know what the agenda is for today. We're going to be here for about an hour. Ayaka and I are both going to spend about 10 minutes each just discussing maybe like common themes that happen with the essays that we've been looking at. I see a question from Amy, and I would love to go ahead and get this started. Go ahead and drop in the chat right now where you're at in your process. Like, are you just getting started? Are you kind of here to get a vibe? Checking out the vibe? Have you been working on this? Maybe you just finished a semester of school and you took like a week off of for summer, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I have to switch gears now. Okay, I have it just getting started. If you're like Ayaka and I, you've actually been working on applications for, Ayaka and I've been working on applications, I want to say like 1 year plus, obsessively, but we've been in application land for a few years actually. So I have some people in the chat just getting started applying next fall. I've taken the LSAT, applying this cycle. working on personal statements, fall 22. Yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of applications for fall 22, which if you're here and you're applying for fall 22, perfect timing, really perfect timing. Let's see, taking the LSAT in August, applying this fall, haven't started essays yet. See, Morgan says applying next fall. When you say applying next fall, Morgan, do you mean you're applying for next fall? Is Morgan in the room? You can unmute yourself if you want, or write in chat. Jamina says, was supposed to apply last year, but things went wrong, so doing this again. Jamina, I wish I could tell you if I had a dime for every person I met that said that, which is a good thing. I hope that you feel comforted. It's like everything been on your mind for a really long time, taking the LSAT in October, applying fall 22. Perfect. Everybody's in really good timing. Okay, wow, this is still coming in. So Ayaka is going to take 10 minutes to talk about how to get started. Resetting LSAT next week. Okay, Patricia, you go. If you need to exit,
He's got this.
and like, you got this. Good luck. Bullet points for essays. Amazing. I love this. Everybody, great job. Congratulations. If you are here for fall of 22, you are doing really well. We have Crystal's 36. Great. I'm 29. Let's do it. Let's see each other in school. Let's do it. All right, just getting started. Foreign law graduate. Okay, so a lot of us are actually strangely in similar spaces. I'm not used to that, Ayaka. What about you? About like everybody's like right on time, fall 22, has some essays done in LSAT land. That's what I read.
Yeah. And I think more often than not, we think that we're in our own, singular bubble and we feel alone. You see in the chat, we're all in very similar places. Same with Alisa, same with me. And, the process comes in different ways. Sometimes you got the LSAT score, but you just need to do the essay. Sometimes you have the essay, you're working on the LSAT score. It all comes. So, I hope you feel comfort in that there's a cohort of people. There's 56 people here who feel the same way and may feel the same way. So I hope you may be able to make some connections here today. I hope you feel connected to us and feel like you can reach out to us at any point during your journey. We're always here to help. I would love to kind of do a little spiel about just essays because I love writing essays, and this application essay is such a writing journey, and it's such a personal journey that I do want to go over some things to look out for, especially coming out of the pandemic. And I know a lot of communities are coming out of it and we're getting back into, being with people and all that. So I really do want to kind of cover some basics, and then we'll take questions. Feel free to put questions or come off mute at any point during the session. We love, interacting with you all. So here we are. Let me share my screen. And I hope this works. Alrighty. So I really wanted to talk about topic selection for your essays. And this goes for personal statement, diversity statement, addenda, all of that. Anything you write in your application is an opportunity to connect on a human level with the admissions officers. Your LSAT, your GPA, your resume, they're all facts about you. Maybe not the most accurate facts about you, but we want to fill in those gaps of who you are as a person with your essays. And I like to say the topic selection, I think people have a really good idea of what they want to talk about, but they don't have a objective idea of what that topic means. So I like to categorize topic in general, specific, and niche. General, when I say general, it means around a specific event that is widely known. So something like 9/11, Black Lives Matter, COVID, and these are really common topics, right? And we'll get into how to mitigate some of this stuff, but the general, it's around these big events that many people have experienced. So kind of the benefit of that is you don't have to explain too much of that event, right? So that's the general. Specific, these are really specific things to you. So if you had legal troubles in your family, or you have work experience in law or something like that, like those are very specific and they're unique to yourself. So that's what I mean when I say specific. You need to give a little bit more context in what you're writing about, the event that you're writing about. And then niche, this is a little tough, but a niche topic is, and I find this more with people who have had a career, myself included, and it's in a very specific spot where you need to give a good amount of detail for people to understand your story. And so that requires, you explaining maybe some terminology, some like the situation, even though it might be simple to you, it's difficult for other people to understand because they might not have the knowledge to understand that event that you're talking about. So this is in general how I divide up topics. Most people will sit in specific because they're talking about that moment that they wanted to pursue law, and it's a personal moment, and it comes from just living their day-to-day or working or something like that. Any questions there? I'm sorry, I don't have the chat open.
I have the chat open, and you're welcome to unmute yourself. Anybody kind of thinking about topics like this right now, you can write in the chat and just say, yeah, one of these is what my essay is about, or maybe you could see yourself falling into one of these three places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Specific, nice Alexis.
I love that the chat is blowing up. So it's great. Let me continue. This is a short spiel, so let's get through this. So, pros and cons to both, to all these three, and not to say that any of these categories of topics is good or bad. I've seen essays that are super good in the general category, right? And then you see essays that are in the niche category, so there's no good or bad to it. It's just knowing how much of yourself you need to put into that essay and how much context you need to put in that essay. So for general topics, like I said, because majority of people understand a little bit instantly. If you said 9/11, and I know like that dates me a little bit, but people understand what that date was, what happened on that date, and what the country went through after that. We know COVID, we know Black Lives Matter, all of that. So you don't need to explain the situation too much, but what needs to happen on the other side of that is how you've come out of it, right? How has it changed yourself? Has it been a call to action for yourself? And explain that. So there's more of you involved, and it's more about your actions, what outcomes you have come out with. And this general topic, especially COVID, Black Lives Matter, Asian hate, it's really common. The last, I think, 20 essays I've seen, a good 10 to 15 have been about COVID or Black Lives Matter or, some sort of racism in society. So it's common, not to say that you can't write about it. It's hard to make it unique. And you need to put a lot more of yourself out there. Specific, this is the one where most people sit in. These aren't hard situations to talk about. We can kind of get the gist of it if you kind of explain a little bit of it. But you can fall into the story of like, you're trying to tell your origin story of why you want to go to law school, but it might have happened 20 years ago, or, for some of you younger folks, like 5 years ago. So if that story gets stuck in that time period, and you have to make that jump back to the present day, and we see that format of an essay way too often. So you really want to be creative with how you present that topic. We've seen it done very, very well. We've seen it done not so well, so it's out there.
So I just want to touch base on that too, because I know like the chat's blowing up. And so what you're saying is a lot of people and a lot of essays we're seeing is that somebody has a powerful moment, say even 5 years ago, before they even go to undergraduate school, and their whole essay is about that singular powerful moment. And it sort of leaves the reader going, well, yeah, that seems really powerful, but what about now? Like and some people are maybe telling a story from 20 years ago. and leaving out the present moment, which is really important because the present version of you is the one that's going to law school.
Yeah. And Akshay, I see your question in the chat, and I'm sorry if I missed any other questions. The issue of telling the story we want to tell. So this comes up especially with people who want to talk about some really traumatic things that have happened in their life. And, you know, that's an important story in your life, and I don't want to diminish the importance of that. However, we are applying to a professional school, and is it appropriate to talk about you know, a trauma that you may have not processed properly yet, and make that your focal point in your essay? And that's a personal decision. Alisa, you have a great spiel about this. I like to say, for example, I've had a lot of trauma in my life. Like, I had a very close friend who was murdered by her family, and that family member kind of offed the whole family. Important story in my life, not important in my law school application. It's not the story that I need to tell why I want to go to law school, right? So, and a lot of people have attachments to these stories, and I understand these are so important and so personal, but sometimes they're not appropriate for explaining why you want to go to law school, right? So kind of we need to make that differentiation, and I think that's what I'm saying when we need to differentiate between the story you want to tell and the story that you need to tell. And the story that you need to tell needs to be why you need to go to why you want to go to law school, why law school is the right move for you at this point in your life, your career, all of that.
And I'm going to actually talk a lot more about this. And I see a lot of questions in the chat from Misty and Emily and Crystal, and I'm actually about to answer all of those as well. So hang tight. I'm reading all of your chats, and I'm like, oh great, I'm about to talk about that. And I did mention it's Asra, I believe, that says how much do you need to talk about previous jobs and extracurriculars? Don't. If it's in your resume, which all of that stuff should be, don't talk about that in your personal statement. Just try to give life to a story.
Yeah, great point. And then lastly, we're at the niche topics. These are, so my essay actually kind of sits here is, you know, I'm in a really niche part of IT. I'm in cybersecurity, and I want to pursue that in law school. And a lot of the terminology, I remember I showed my essay to Alisa, and she's like, I don't understand half of the stuff that's going on, because the terminology is so, and I'm used to it because I'm in it day to day, but I forget that people don't know what east-west attack patterns are. Like, what does that mean? So that, you know, you have to explain a lot more. You need to give more context. You need to dumb down things that you're like, oh, but you know, that nuance is really important, and you have to let it go. So some of that stuff happens here in the niche topic. So you can fall into the trap of explaining stuff about, let's say, your job or about the incident, but not really getting to you, right? What you did, what your actions were, what you wanted, what you got out of it. So that's really the trap there, and you want to find that balance. So that's kind of where we are with all three categories. You guys have access to this document, so feel free to read a little bit deeper into it, and happy to answer any questions. But just general advice for general topics, keep it personal. Yes, we got the background of the event, but keep it all personal. What did you do? What happened? What actions did you take, and what did you learn from it? For specific, you know, gauge how personal you want the essay to be, and then balance the story with your purpose, right? What is the purpose of you telling that story? And don't get too caught up in the storytelling, like the background of that. The niche, you really want to narrowly tailor that topic to what you want to say, which is, you know, your purpose for going to law school and all that, and really get someone to read that essay before you turn it in, because sometimes to a person who's not in your field, it might just sound like gibberish, and you don't want that happening, you know, during when someone in admissions is reading your essay. So general advice there. This is really all of what I talked about for the last 10 minutes is this first wave in our system that Alisa and I have kind of kind of put down on paper of how we approach every single essay that we see. And this is the first step in choosing a topic. And, I don't think you need to be 100% in one topic. You can kind of write about multiple and see what really fits you, fits your writing style, fits your personality, and then go from there. But this is really wave one. And then, we'll talk about structure, details, style, and then how that all fits in your application as a whole. And this is really how we view every single essay that comes across our desk is, this. So feel free to take a look at this after class. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. But I will give it back to Alisa.
These slides, and Shirley, thank you, Ayaka, for all of that. And everyone, we're trying to drop these links in. Shirley, if you can hear me, LSAT Unplugged admin, please, can you drop these links in the chat? So there's a lot of, oh, great. There's a lot of questions going on in here. I do have one for Ayaka, but let me read this right quick from Jordan. Can you explain deeper how you tailored your PS to show you're advancing your profession from a career? Okay, great. We have so many questions in the chat that I would love to get to them all. Ayaka, do you want to give a brief summary? Like, how did you talk about the switch? I could talk about Ayaka's essay all day and how she did it, talking about the switch, which I think is great, but go for it.
Yeah. So quick kind of overview of that essay is like, I was working in cybersecurity. I was in Tokyo. So, and there was this huge breach that was international, and it affected, I think, oh God, all the big countries around the world. And so we got called in to the Ministry of Defense to kind of talk about, what went on, who was affected, who in the country was affected, who connected to those companies were affected, and all that. And, the conversation went to policy. And I know the tech, I know, all the vocabulary, all that. Policy is one where I just don't have, it's not the vocabulary that's wrong. It's more, I just don't have the base knowledge. And that's the setup.
Stop you right there, Ayaka, because I know that you're restating your essay, but I almost want to talk about structurally what you did that I found so important.
Sure.
You're restating a story, which I think is great, but I think that, something that I find is that the story is good. So and I'm sorry, I'm totally interrupting right now, but something I find really interesting, and for anybody listening to this, if you are in a job right now and you are trying to write about a career switch, there shouldn't be any question of how do I talk about this without reinstating my resume, because what Ayaka is talking about right now is that she told a story of one specific instance that happened at her job. And then she goes on to give a series of examples of actions she took to overcome that barrier. And then when she ran out of all these options to overcome this barrier at her job, she realizes that law is the next logical step for her. So there is no resume bullet pointing, this is my duties at my job. If you're saying this is what I do at my job, then this is not a good personal statement. But if you're breathing, Ayaka said it, you said it so beautifully, Ayaka, if you're breathing life into what it says on your resume by giving us this story about their breach. And I just want to make that really clear, but please go ahead, Ayaka.
Yeah. And I think you point out a good point is I'm not talking about my day-to-day. My day-to-day is sometimes really boring and sometimes really hectic. I'm not talking about my day-to-day. I'm talking about a specific incident and what came out of that, right? So I had a couple of action items that came out of that incident of I want to learn more. Therefore, I'm going to conferences. I'm calling up analysts in our company. I'm making, all these connections, but still I feel that I'm falling short. And therefore I find that law school is my next step. And that's the way that I've set it up. I remember the first time I wrote it out, I had to explain all these concepts and all of that. So it was a 6-page essay that needs to get cut down a lot. And really, it's better to have a lot of information out there and then cut down. So, and that's kind of where I say my essay falls into that niche category of it requires a lot of explanation in the background. I hope that answers your question about how that got tailored. Like, who was it? I'm sorry, I lost the person who asked. Jordan, was it? Who asked about how to tailor that? I hope that answered the question. Let me know if it doesn't.
It did, yes, with both of your responses. That was very nice. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, we have so many questions in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and get started on mine as well. And Misty, I see that what is the average length of a personal statement? The school will tell you. So go look at the school's application requirements. Some schools says 2 pages. Some schools say 2 to 3 pages. I'd say on average, it's two pages. That is double spaced. We've got some questions in how to write a good hook without being too cliche. Ayaka and I talk about this every night before we go to sleep. I'm just kidding. We don't, but we talk about it a lot, and it's almost impossible to write a good hook the first time around. And the second time around, it's a lot harder to write a hook that makes sense with the rest of your essay. So you actually have to just keep trying. Ayaka, anything on that?
Yeah, and actually Taylor also sent in a question about this via email, which thank you, Taylor, for doing that. The hook, number one, I think you have to remember admissions officers have to read your essay. You're not, convincing them to read your essay with that first line. They're going to read it. If it's super boring, it's not a great experience for them, right? So that's why we say you want a hook, but not a like, ooh, I sat in my seat and I'm sweating, my palms are sweating, blah, blah. Like that is a little much. I find the better hooks are ones where we understand the story fairly quickly. Because
Yes.
the one, there's people out there who will piece by piece give you small bits of the story. It's annoying, number one. Number two, you're reading so fast through these, and I'm admissions officers are reading thousands of these. So, it's almost work to get through that personal statement if you're giving the information piece by piece.
I want to shout it from the mountaintops, what you just said. So everyone, it's really important. Make it make sense on the first sentence. That's the best hook you can have. Make it make sense from the first sentence. Don't start it out with a question. And if you do start out with something like lingering to try to hook, make it make sense by the second sentence. This is such a beautiful way of putting it, Ayaka. Don't try to piece it, imagine fish food. Stylistically, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and plug in my what I'm going to present to everyone today. Please keep writing in the chat. And again, you can always email us at admissions@lsatunplugged.com. And we're going to share a lot of what we've learned. Also, all of what we're sharing with you today, we have both personally been on one-on-one interviews with admissions officers. University of Maryland, Carey School of Law, Jonathan Glick. I spoke to him personally one-on-one, UCLA, Dean of Admissions, Rob Schwartz, and more. So I'm going to go ahead and share this document right now. I'm going to click on it myself, and I'm going to screen share. There are emojis in this presentation. I don't know. I was feeling like that day. So excuse me. And I see a question from Ryan right quick that says, that your personal statement is so raw to you that you're not comfortable sharing it with people around you. Well, first of all, that's what consultants are for. That is, Ayaka and I are consultants. We don't know you. We've seen a lot of personal stories. Both of us actually have very raw personal stories. I have an insanely personal raw story. If it's so raw that you're not comfortable talking about it in a professional setting, it is not a good statement to write about. And I'm going to cover that in my presentation right now. Also, keep in mind that this is not to scare you, but all of your application materials are unearthed, I believe, when you take the bar after school. So this is not going into a vacuum. It's going around to many admissions officers. It's coming back out when you take the bar. If it's not something you're comfortable with professionally, then it's not a good idea to be seeking out. Let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen.
And while you're pulling that up, Alisa, I do want to address some questions here. So Ram, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. You're asking what the risk is of writing, about COVID. I think the risk is that there are a lot of people writing about COVID. And, yes, great topic, great insight. However, I've seen what you've written, about helping refugees and stuff like that. more than 5 times this cycle, people who are applying this fall. So if I'm seeing it, there's a lot of people out there who are seeing it. I think the trick is there, not a bad topic. The trick is to make that personal. How did that turn into an action item for you? And what did you come out of that with? Yeah.
Do not talk about a problem if you don't say what you did about the problem in the essay.
Yeah.
Pretty much ever. And also do not, and Ayaka, making it personal, like a good way to make that personal, if you want to take a step further, would be like, and like maybe like a change of perspective. Maybe like had a certain core value before this came about, and you went through this experience and like you had a shift of perspective, which shows an incredibly strong moral character, that you are capable of shifting yourself, that you're capable of having that like learning curve. That means you're adaptable, you enjoy learning, which would make you a good candidate to be in a classroom. So I just want to, like, everything I'm about to say right now, it's not about impressing someone. The admissions committee is bottom line figuring out if you add value to a classroom setting. Are you going to be a good candidate for discussion? Are you going to be a good candidate for someone who brings creativity, a capacity for original thought? Are you a problem solver? Are you adaptable? Do you like to learn? So for example, if you're bringing up a statement of saying, I saw these bad things happen, or I'm incredibly empathetic, this is all fantastic, but how do you add value to their community? So that's is really the bottom line of everything. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because there's so many people in the room. I want to value your time. And also we've given you the link. We will email these links back out after this so you can look at them all you want, which is why I will just go through this quickly. Let's see, there's a lot of writing on this. All right, so what your essay should not do, please don't talk mostly about someone else. If your biggest inspiration is your grandmother or your mother or your father, because your father immigrated and your father started his own business and helped the community. I've seen this so many times where I've even told someone, please do not write your essay about somebody else. And they hit me back with, well, if I show all this appreciation for what this person does, it showcases my core values. It showcases how strong a person I am, that I am grateful and I witness, and this is what's important to me. And it just doesn't work that way. Your grandmother, your mother is not applying for law school. You can show appreciation for other things all you want, and it just doesn't work that way. They're not the one applying to law school. So also this happens, I've seen it with also non-traditional students who have spent time out of school. They don't know where to start when talking about themselves. So they talk about how they were raised. Maybe like my mother or my father raised me with like being strict, or was like always encouraged diversity. It's just not that interesting and you don't have that much time. So just don't do that. If you want to mention it, just make sure that it's centric around you. I've already mentioned this. Please don't point to an injustice you once witnessed as the core message. It's just not a good look if you are creating an essay that's centered around this one time. You really want to, maybe you could talk about the way you shifted or what you did after that, which Ayaka has brought up quite a bit. And don't paint a chip on your shoulder or let your suffering overshadow your potential. This is really similar to don't write a lot about something else. For example, if you've been under a lot of trauma, if you have experienced a lot of hardship, which I have, and I was just talking about Ayaka about this, how do you balance mentioning all of the hardship or trauma that you've been through, or maybe a problem that you've been through in an essay? Only mention it in a sentence. Again, as Ayaka mentioned, the admissions officers, their job is to read your essay, and your essay should only be about 2 pages long, and they don't have memory issues. So if you mention something in a sentence in the first paragraph and say, I'm a victim of domestic violence, and then spend the rest of the essay talking about yourself and what you did out of that, the way that you overcame that, maybe how it changed you as a person, and present day events, that would suffice. I would recommend that. Use a sentence to say I'm a victim of domestic violence, and spend the rest of the essay talking about yourself. Also, this is what your essay should not do. Please don't talk strictly about your childhood, especially if you're not going to bring up anything currently. This presentation, this whole class will be on, workshop will be on YouTube. probably in a few days. It usually takes about the end of the week for it to get up. Ayaka already mentioned this. Don't use a lot of jargon from your job. We don't know what you're talking about. I was once a professional tap dancer, and I had written an essay about being a soloist and a principal. And I showed it to all of the course members in LSAT Unplugged, and they were like, God, there's so much dance jargon in here. And I was so offended. I was like, what are you guys talking about? There's no jargon in here whatsoever. And I didn't change it. And it wasn't until months later, I was speaking one-on-one with another consultant for LSAT Unplugged. She's like, and I realized that she didn't know the difference between a soloist and a principal. So Ayaka says this all the time. We get so stuck in our head, like as an individual, that we are processing things that when we write them on paper, we don't even understand that it's not fully processed to another person. That is why you need other eyes on your essay. Maybe you know something about yourself or understand context, but it doesn't all fit into the paper or the essay. That is why you need other eyes on your paper, especially with childhood timelines or something that's significant, something you think is really important, and it's not really that important. And also, Tori, I just want to dispel like the myth. It's not that you're not supposed to talk about something from your resume. It's just don't list off the same bullet points on your resume. You can talk about something on your resume all you want, as long as you are breathing life into it. And what we mean by that is don't say what you did in terms of like your duties. Tell us about a story. If you work with people, tell us about a time that you worked with one person that was particularly challenging and how it made you more somebody that was able to compromise. So just tell a story about what happened within that. Also, don't badmouth lawyers. Maybe there's people in this room that are saying, okay, of course, duh. But Ayaka and I have seen a lot of essays recently that people are saying like, I want to go to law school because I can be a better lawyer than the lawyers I'm seeing. It's just, what's the point of saying that? You just absolutely don't need to say that. Ayaka pointed it out too, that schools are the ones that churn out those lawyers. Okay, this is what your essay could do, but doesn't have to do. I would recommend one of these or something like this your essay should be addressing. So are you interested in learning? How are you in a group dynamic? If you, for example, if you write an entire essay and it's talking all about something that you've done for work, ask yourself, does it showcase that you're good at a group dynamic? Because I've seen a lot of essays where I catch myself wondering, do I really want to be in a study group with that person? Or does that person really add value to a compromising like classroom where everyone's going to have to be respectful? Are you thoughtful? Do you have empathy? Maybe you have a service heart. Maybe you want to talk about how you've spent time in the Peace Corps and how that changed you and how you need to further yourself. And how do you respond to stress? If you are bringing up a stressful moment in your essay, please do yourself a favor and paint yourself in a positive light and talk about what you've done after that or what you've learned after that. This is what your essay does not have to do 100% of the time. If you're in logical reasoning study mode right now, that you understand that I'm not saying don't do this. I'm saying your essay doesn't have to do this. So your essay can do this if it works, but these are some issues that kind of come up school by school. Some schools ask you to say, why do you want to go to our law school? Look that up on their website, please. Some schools say, you don't really have to say why specifically my school. Please reach out to the admissions officers. People have different preferences on that. There is not a one size fits all. In fact, it can be really lame if you write an entire beautiful story about learning how to ride a bike, which is an absolutely sufficient topic to write about. Doesn't have to be intense. You can write about learning how to ride a bike and how it made you a better person. It made you more thoughtful, and how you are equating riding a bike to learning how to do something new. And now you have a new form of transportation and you can join a bike group. You can write an essay about that. And if you at the very bottom say, and that's why I want to go to XYZ law school, that is not thoughtful. And it actually makes you look pretty lame. So if you're throwing in why a school in the last paragraph, and Ayaka, to take your words, Ayaka will say, kind of looks like you're swallowing a brochure sometimes. If you're telling the school what makes them great, it's not personal. It's obvious that you just went on the website and just said you have one of the most impressive, clinics. It has to be more personal than that. Don't say the school's name unless you're absolutely certain that you will submit the correct essay to the correct school. I have been in one-on-one conversations with so many admissions officers, and they are shaking their heads and they're saying, I don't know why I still need to say this, but it happens so often that they are, I don't want to say they're begging us, like Ayaka and I, and people that are representing these conversations, but they are adamant. Do not say the school's name unless you are going to absolutely prioritize that you will submit it to the correct school. It's not worth it. Just leave the school's name out. Just leave the school's name out if you want to, but this is just what doesn't have to do. And your essay doesn't have to be about something very intense. A lot of people get this confused. They think that they need to write about something very intense, something really important and really big. And that's where the mistake comes in. You don't have to do that. This is just about like content and stressful moments, trigger warnings. Do be clear. Please don't say something really bad happened to me, because it just leaves the reader guessing. Focus on what happened after. Don't be too graphic. You can just use one sentence to say, I was a victim of domestic violence, and go ahead and focus on what happened after. This is my favorite slide. This is what your essay absolutely should always do 100%. And this meme, I made this presentation right when the royal interview with Oprah had come out, and I really mean it. And I'm going to back up this meme like all day, every day. Please don't write about something you think the school wants to hear unless you have an absolute air grip handle that that essay is what you could spend hours talking about. Make sure the essay shows who you are as a person. Showcase your core values, showcase your interests, showcase that you are capable of original thought. If you are, and Ayaka has a really great example about this, and I hope I didn't lose everyone because I've been talking for a really long time. So if you have zoned out, it's okay. Come back because I want to share this with you. Ayaka is someone who is interested in working in a very specific field. And her and I have been grappling with, does she talk about the one thing she's interested in for her essays and submit that to schools that maybe don't even have specialty programs in what she's interested in? And Ayaka, do you want to share with them what we found out about that?
Sure. And I kind of move the needle a little bit here and there on that. I think, there are top priority schools for me that have that program. And, I'm, like I said before, I'm 6 years out of college. So I've had a career, maybe not as long as some of you guys here today. But I know where I want to go, what I want to do. And this is not necessarily a career. It is a career change in terms of like what I'm getting out of law school and what I'll be doing after. But it is still on the trajectory of where I want to go. So that's more of a priority for me than to go to a big name school. So, and maybe not have the connections or have the opportunities that a school with a specific program may have. So that's kind of where I rationalize myself. And, it's so tempting to go on, Google and say the best law schools out there, and you always get the T14. It's so tempting to do that. But what I'm trying to pursue is much more important to me than a name of the school. So that's kind of where I sit in that conversation. Hope that answers that question, Alisa.
Yeah, I guess is just for everyone, if you're thinking, okay, like I'm interested in, like I don't have an example in my head, so I'm going to say I'm interested in ice cream law. And yes, ice cream. So if I'm interested in ice cream law and I know that 3 of the schools I'm applying to, maybe they offer a course or 2 on ice cream law, but they don't like have entire like programs dedicated to that, clinics dedicated to that yet. Should I be changing up my personal statement essay? You don't have to. You absolutely don't have to. People go to law school for so many reasons. I can't even realistically tell you how many reasons somebody would go to law school. You don't have to try to tailor everything perfectly to that school. You can if you want to, absolutely. I'm not stopping you, but they don't expect that. And if you're going to have a weaker personal statement because you've written so many, then I would say it's not worth it. A lot of questions coming in the chat. This is pretty much all I have for you today. It looks like we have about 10 minutes left, so I think we should open up the floor to as many questions as we can possibly answer. This is just the last slide here. Where is a good place to start if you are still thinking about how can I start my essay? When is a time you're interested in this? Do you have empathy? How do you respond to stress? These are all good places for you to start. I have someone's hand raised in the room.
Hey there.
Hey, is it
Hi.
Daniel?
Yeah, it's Daniel. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this for us. I really appreciate it. This question is more tailored for Ayaka because I'm kind of in a similar situation.
Sure.
How should you, and if so, how do you maybe explain a career change in your personal statement?
I think it goes to the why. And sorry, I'm going to return you with the question is, why is it important to explain the career change in your personal statement?
My thoughts on it and why I've considered maybe including it in my personal statement was because I feel that maybe the school would want to know, okay, this person did X, Y, and Z in college and maybe worked in that field for maybe a year or two. Why do they suddenly want to transition into, in my case, might be a totally different area, maybe somewhat unrelated?
Sure. I think, oh, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and answer this too, because I also had a career switch. I was a professional dancer, and I had this conversation with my coach and with Steve and said, how do I possibly explain this? It's not going to make sense on paper. And the best feedback I got for this specifically was, actually, it will make sense if you're telling the truth. There is something that happened that made you think, okay, well, I need to switch gears here. And maybe it's not like, maybe the first story is like, could be something like that actually just like annoyed you. Like maybe you've like just had enough. I am absolutely positive there's someone in this room that was living a certain life or at a certain job and then just said enough, and they want to maybe something better for themselves. But there is a story there. And if it's not there for you yet, you haven't thought of it yet. Like there is a story that you can paint, like Ayaka's example, that would make sense of why law school would be a reasonable next step for you.
Yeah, I would really focus on the why there. You know, we just saw an essay and a resume together, Alisa and I, and, you know, it was like this person looked like he was doing, you know, pre-med or a lot of science during college, and then graduating out of college with that, going into law. So, you know, looking at the resume and then looking at the personal statement, and then we talked to the person and it's like, okay, it makes sense. I think it's important to maybe explain that maybe in an addenda or something like that, but might not need to be the core focus of your personal statement. You know, where you put that, that's up to you. But your personal statement isn't a place to explain you know, certain things that you feel like you need explaining. It's more of a place of showing who you are. Maybe that career change is, you know, what you're about. You know, I always talk about moving the goalpost for myself, and maybe that's the theme that you might want to write about and say, you know, this career change is exactly that, moving that goalpost for yourself. Maybe, you know, so there's different ways to phrase that and frame it.
Perfect. And is there another video series like this one for the addendum? Or
you can ask
guys
about it.
planning
You can ask about it. You know, we like to keep these open. I know we're going into, you know, the application season for this fall, so that's kind of why we wanted to start with, or kind of do this one now about personal statements and, you know, essays in general. But addenda is a similar approach of you know, you want to talk about what happened if you're writing an addenda for something specific, what happened, why it happened, and then, you know, how you came out of it.
And yes, to John's question, do we have videos on YouTube? We have a lot of videos on YouTube. There are, Ayaka and I actually did a series. We teach every Wednesday night in the LSAT Unplugged course, and we also answer all of our emails. But we actually did a series where every single week it was something different, how to pick a topic, what topic is important. We do essay editing workshops where we read over essays. We also do all of these one-on-one if you're not in the course, and you can just email us at admissions@lsatunplugged.com. I have another raised hand from Stephen.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, thank you again, Ayaka. Thank you again, Alisa. Is it Alisa or Alisa? Now I'm like getting nervous.
It's Alisa, thank you.
So my question is similar to Daniel and in a similar situation to Ayaka, that I've been out of undergrad for some time now. I've had a career, and I am already in the mentality of like, I know exactly the kind of like law school I want to go to. I know the law program, I know the firm, I know the clients I want to work with. I have all that really set. But the problem is that I find, or perhaps the embarrassment is that I don't know how to find the connection of like, how do I piece 5 years of experience that isn't directly related to this topic I've had for a really long time in my head? I don't know how to bridge that gap without feeling like a law school admissions counselor would say like, oh, he's really clear on like what he wants to do here, but he has no experience before this of doing that.
I'm gonna
Oh,
echo.
go ahead.
I'm gonna echo what Ayaka said before. Like, why do you want to go to school, like law school?
Oh, to one of my theses is like to gain the mentality, the vocabulary of what a lawyer does to help advocate for anyone who's building a business in this online world that we are in. And I'm really interested in finding out like social media has become a currency, and how can I or how can law firms continue to protect those upcoming people who are building their businesses like this. I'm really interested in finding out how to create and protect more opportunities for entrepreneurship in this digital space.
Okay.
So again, leading into IP.
That's great. Has anything like happened to you that made you think that? Like, were you? Like,
it
what
was
happened?
I really always wanted to do something in like the internet, and I've seen so many of my friends or other colleagues or like peers of mine create businesses, and I've supported them, and I just think that there's something there there's something for me to do there.
How did you support them? Like just like
financially or just like posting about their business.
And did
And
you like
seeing,
learn? Did you like see like there were issues and they weren't protected?
not that, no, I didn't get that deep into it. It was mostly just like trying to build the audience of their like business. I wasn't able to like see that part of it.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like you have you have an outline. Like if you wanted to, I'm not telling you, I'm not like a personal statement doctor, like where I'm like, you could do this. I'm not diagnosing you with an outline, but you have an outline. You could talk about, you know, what you're passionate about and what you're interested in. And Stephen, you're sort of touching on something that I've talked about myself. I've talked about with Ayaka at length, that you don't have to explain yourself. You are not a lawyer yet. You're not making a case. Okay, everyone needs to hear that. You don't have to prove something. They're not looking for you to like create an airtight case. It's not a presentation of like, and this is why I deserve to go to law school. It's just, you're not making a case for yourself, and they don't expect that of you. All you have to do is talk about what interests you and what you're most passionate about. And you already have that. So you don't have to explain the 5 years. You're not having to connect those dots. But like the outline that I've heard you say is like, you could talk about, like, I supported one of my friends and I supported them financially, and I saw that we weren't growing an audience. And this is a thing too, everyone. Curiosity is completely valid. Like that is actually a good quality to have. They want you to be a curious person, to be interested. So you can like, I was funding them financially. I saw that it was hard to grow an audience. And then suddenly something inside me sparked. That would be cool. I would like to read that. What do you think, Ayaka?
I mean, I love that point. And, you know, I think the first thing that you said about this topic, that you said, you know, you know which school you want to go to, you know which program, you know which firm, you know which clients, like that's a lot of work that you've done. talk about that, because that's an action that you've taken, right? You said you see all these people and you understand, you know, we live in a digital world and we've become more digital since the pandemic. And, you know, so, you know, that's something that you could really talk about in the research that you've done and the action items that came out of it. And I'm sure that's fueling more interest towards that, right? So that could really help you out. I hope that answers the question there.
Yes, it did. Thank you all really so much. That really helped a lot.
Yeah, and I've seen, we have other hands raised, and if we're probably going to go 10 minutes over just because of how many hands are raised, but I also just want to bring up something important to you, in that it's okay to talk about imagining yourself in a role. I have specifically asked an admissions officer this, being a person of color, being someone of low income, being queer, and being a woman. I've asked them, like, I find that I keep coming across people that say, I find it like embarrassing, or like, do you think I have an ego if I'm like, I imagine myself in this position, like I want to be in this. And they came back at me like, no, that's not weird at all. Like that's what, so just, I'm leaving you with that. I have another hand raised from Jamina and then Brenda. Or it looks like Jamina's maybe just exited out. So Brenda, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. So thanks for chatting with us. This is all really helpful. I haven't started my essays yet, but I'm kind of brainstorming. But my biggest, I guess, hurdle right now is trying to figure out what information to put in the personal statement versus diversity statement, and then also in my GPA addendum, because, you know, like trauma is a big part of what my story is, and it's also a big part of why I want to go to law school. So kind of similar to Stephen, like my experiences of childhood trauma and also domestic violence influence the particular types of law that I want to go into, but they've also affected my performance in school. And then I also feel that I have a unique perspective as you know, being a minority, being in the foster care system, and things like that. So how do I differentiate what goes into what essay?
Sure. I think for me, basic rule of thumb, and I've put this in the chat before, personal statement, I think, is internally looking, you know, who you are, what makes you tick, all of that. Diversity statement for me, and Alisa, please jump in here because I know you have your spiel about this. For me, it's about what you bring to the classroom. It's what unique perspective you have. So the first part of your diversity statement should be what's the unique perspective, and the second part is how does that show up in the classroom, in the career, in the job, right? So the two statements are asking for two different things, right? The personal statement is who you are, tell us who you are, you know, why, what led you here, what led you to applying. The diversity statement is what you bring. So in approaching it in that way, I think it might, you know, steer you to think about what goes into what statement differently. I do caution people who might want to repeat the same things in their personal and their diversity. Not that that's absolutely wrong, but we want to give a different piece of yourself in each part of the application. So if you've said something in the personal statement, trust that the admissions officer remembers that and they will read that diversity statement as well. So, you know, I don't think you need to repeat and rinse and repeat the same things, just have a different perspective and have a different purpose for each of those essays.
I second what Ayaka said. I like to say the personal statement should do a few things. It should, one, show that you're resilient enough to make it through a three-year program. I hate to say this, but they don't want you to drop out. You're going to mess with their rankings. So you need to show that you're resilient enough to make it through a three-year program, or that you have the curiosity or the grit. You also have to reasonably supply information on why law school would be like a next step for you, a logical next step for you. It does have to make sense why you're applying to law school in some way, shape, or form. I think that that's it for personal statement. So why law school, and can you make it through the program? And then there's a lot that goes into it. And diversity, just like Ayaka said, it's like, what do you bring to the classroom setting that's going to be different than the person next to you, sitting next to you. And that's the way I create that lens for everyone. With the trauma that you've been through, there are a lot of applications that ask for an essay specifically that say, tell us about hardship that you've been through. So absolutely share all those things about yourself. But there's probably things about you that are really important and really exciting to learn about. It could, if you knit, you can write an entire essay about knitting and then write an entire essay about trauma and violence, and the whole picture is going to be there.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next hand raised, I know Emily, you put in the chat, what is opinion of going into law school directly from undergrad is not a good idea. I think that's a fantastic idea. You can go from undergrad to law school, and many people do. I've actually, when I graduated out of college, I talked to a professor and he gave me some advice that really hit home with me. And that's why I took the time off from school, and then, did a career, took more time off than I was expecting, but came back to this route is, I was there and I went to Berkeley. So, there's all these ideals about equality and, I'm never going to let someone talk down to me in a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. And he was like, that's great. But, in the workforce, these are really microaggressions. And if you don't know how it comes out in the workforce, how are you going to talk about it in a way that you understand the other person's position? And really all his classes and all of that was like about that, right? Like, put yourself in the other person's shoe. Do you have the imagination to do that? And really the law is, that. So that's why I was like, okay, I want to go into the workforce first, figure out where I want to go. Because, mine was like, I just want to go to law school. I have a better direction now. That worked for me. It might not work for others. You just, you might be ready to go to law school right out of undergrad. And I think that's a personal journey. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I
Okay, we have
Janice. Yeah.
Oh, hello, ladies. I'm so happy to be here. I listen to your podcast all the time. So I'm all done fanning out for fake. But I will tell you guys that I enjoy the different perspectives on how to write a diversity statement. I feel as if the biggest thing about me, I'm super non-traditional, married with 4 children, out of school 15, 18 years ago. I did do a master's degree with an A average, but my undergrad suffered the entire time simply because my father passed away. I never came back from that. And so I kind of learned that success doesn't always mean A's, although that is my ultimate goal. And I did do that with a master's degree. And that was nothing but God's grace that I even got into that program and was able to prove myself. But I just started free writing my personal statement, and the majority of it is about my father. And I know that was like the number one thing you said, not to make it about someone else, but he just meant that much to me that, I don't know, it was just really hard to come back from that. And I don't know, it just seems like a lot of my personal statement would be even an addendum as to why my grades suffered, et cetera. But it's hard to not talk about really the most important person in my life, and then for him to pass away like that while my first semester of college. So I just don't know where else to go from there. And I've been kind of struggling with, I couldn't believe I've just free wrote 4 pages just about him and my my experience from that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Those are really hard topics just to talk about. And, thank you for being open about that. I think part of it, I think there's multiple ways you can take that. Number one, you could just write an addendum and say, you are 20 years out from, I think you said 20 years out from undergrad. And there's a whole lifetime that you've lived in those 20 years. And so that is worth something. And I think you would be better served to write a personal statement about, not about undergrad. And I understand, there's a lot that happened there, but maybe something, that you accomplished during that time outside of undergrad. And the addendum can address, the death in your family and the closest support that you've had, and kind of address that. You could write about that in your personal statement and kind of address it in that way as well. I think you would have to be very careful about, going too emotional into that and be a little bit, put some space in between that story and the why that you're telling and how that motivates you to go to law school. Like that needs to connect. And so I think that's where, personal or diversity statement. But yeah, I think there's ways to address it. And I think that's really a personal call. And a lot of these application questions are personal calls here. Alisa, if you have any more advice there.
Yeah, I just want to say, wow, that was a really powerful share, Janice. That was really powerful. So I just want to take the time to say thank you, and also just express that it is a really personal call, and the 4 pages free write about your father could be really effective if you can narrow it down to talking about what you've learned from your father and how you carry yourself today. So talk about yourself, talk about maybe choices that you've had to make. Maybe you've been at a crossroads, like, for example, getting good grades or taking care of yourself and your family and having the stress. And I heard a beautiful learning lesson that you pulled from it. And you just mentioned you said, being successful in school meant not getting A's, which just from the way that you said it, it sounded like that was a personal sacrifice. It sounded like that did not feel good to you. And yet you kept going. And to me, I'm already feeling a strong moral character from you. So you can talk about your father. Don't talk about things that you admired from him. You could say, I admired this about him, and that is what led me to do XYZ. So when in doubt, make sure that in the real estate of your personal statement, there's more space talking about your action items. What have you done? What are the hard choices that you've had to make? What have you learned from that? And how are you a different person now? And you can be pulling from the inspiration. And I always like to say, like, sometimes there are 2 essays, and I believe this could be true for Brenda as well. I myself have experienced an incredible amount of trauma, and there's an essay that's like my processing essay, where these are all the things that are going on inside here, and then I take that to Ayaka, and Ayaka's like, that's not that interesting to everyone else, and I'm like, you're right. And it's a different package by the time I present it, but it's still incredibly meaningful, which is hard to do, and you can't do it on the first try, I would say.
Wow, thank you so much, both. I'm so happy to hear that my heart actually came out in that, because though, it was all true. And I'm just so happy to hear this feedback. Thank you so much. Thank you both.
Absolutely.
Nice. We're already 12 minutes over, and I just want to share the space and the time for any last questions. We have a comment in the chat from Steven. He said this process is a process. Yeah, definitely cheering for you. Strangers on this forum are cheering for you. That is true. Even Ayaka and I were strangers, once upon a time, and now we've been each other's, one of our biggest support systems and cheerleaders throughout the entire process. I'm going to leave the space for any other questions. Feel free
Personal and all. Personal questions.
You can unmute yourself. You can change the topic. You can email us at admissions. I'll drop it in the chat.
And know that the application won't show everything and anything that that is about yourself, but we want to put yourself in the best light. And Alisa puts it beautifully, is to paint a beautiful picture of yourself. So essays do that. It's a lot more expressive than a GPA or an LSAT score. So, and I think it's worth it to put a lot of time into it. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. How many schools do you recommend you apply to? I think that is that's a conversation between yourself, your GPA, your LSAT, your personal statement. If you're going for the T14s, and any T14, then apply to all T14s, right? If you don't care about the T14s, like myself. I don't think I'm applying to any of them. But there are other schools that I'm focused on, and schools around a certain area that I want to work in, that I'm focused on. So it really depends on where you're going, where you are in the process, and where you are in your career. Will this episode be a later podcast? It should be on YouTube, Janice.
Yeah, hopefully this will be on YouTube in a few days. We are here to stay. Like I mentioned, we both work closely with Steve. We work closely with the LSAT Unplugged members. You can email us at admissions@lsatunplugged.com. That is truly just Ayaka and I. That's not a group of people. That's our email, and we work together. So ask us questions. We do one-on-one consulting. We do usually charge a small price for that, but we have been finding that our prices are pretty reasonable. And if you can afford that, write to us. I'm a low income person myself, and I can't afford consultants. And so, write to us if you need help, write to us if you have one-off questions, write to us if you are having financial difficulty, just write to us with anything at all. And we're here. We have a few more questions, but go ahead and send us an email. I say there's a fee waiver? Their LSAC, Law School Admissions Council, has a waiver. I won't spend too much time talking about that, but just Google it, LSAC waiver. You have to fill out some forms on that. And you can get two LSAT tests covered for free. I think they're like valued somewhere around 200 each. So you get 2 tests covered for free. You get Law Hub, which is all the practice tests. You do have to present paperwork for that, but go look into it and email us. And I had a lot of fun today, and I talked really quickly because I ran out of water, so I was chugging coffee this whole time. So thank you so much for hanging tight with me, and thank you everyone for your questions.
Thank